Okay, I have a couple of friends or young fellas. Let me remember young fellas, anybody below 60. And but they're both friends of mine. One of them is a former law partner of mine. The other is one who is a son of my best friend over the years. I went to high school with his father, and we've remained friends ever since. It's been almost 5 years now. So you caught that, huh? Aren't you sharp, George? Aren't you sharp today? Oh boy, just like always. Listen, go back to the house and get into another fight with the speaker. Okay, your time might be more productively spent that way. I'm going to talk now about people other than you, so hopefully you can handle that. I'm talking to George, the Santos, the esteemed congressman from Long Island. So I'll just give you their first names here because it's easier for me, and I don't want to possibly embarrass either one of them, and I won't use their full names without permission. I hope that someday they will both come on this program and we can do a Zoom conference together so we can have some healthy debate, which I love. So, first of all, this started when Craig went on his Facebook page and started sort of a diatribe against Joe Biden, whom for some reason he just can't stand. And he called Joe Biden a liar, and he says Joe Biden is, up to his eyeballs in corruption, and so on and so forth. So then Brian, who who hates Donald Trump with almost as much passion, started in on Donald Trump, and to me, that was a mistake. That's the criticism I have of Brian. I generally agree with Brian's political views, and certainly not with Craig's. But he did something for which I always deplore, and I particularly deplore it when I hear it from Republicans, which it seems to me I hear from them almost all the time, which is the whataboutism. Oh, sure, maybe Biden did this, that, or the other, but what about Trump? Well, it's irrelevant what Trump did. If Biden did something that was criminal, then he did something that was criminal. It doesn't matter whether Trump did something which was worse or better or whatever. So, and just between you and me, I don't think that Craig is necessarily an apologist for Donald Trump. But I do have that criticism of Brian. Having said that, I'm reserving most of my criticism. And remember, these people are friends of mine, so I'm not saying anything derogatory about them at all. But Craig starts off, and Craig's, and I have worked on litigation together, so he knows I'm a trial lawyer, and he knows that as a trial lawyer, I don't care what you believe about anything. I care what you can prove with admissible evidence. So, oops, hold on a second. I'm going to take this, unfortunately. So I'm resuming. I had to take that. It was a very important call from Donald Trump. So he calls me a lot. And if you've read, I have actually taken some of those calls as part of my program here, so you may have heard some of those. So you're not surprised that I get frequent calls from Donald Trump. So anyway, so Craig says, do you really think that? And I got to tell you, as a trial lawyer, you never say that. It doesn't matter what he thinks. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what you think. What matters is, what evidence do you have to prove something? So he goes on to say, the shell companies, no evidence. The family members receiving money through shell companies pay money from whom, to whom, for what? None of that. What evidence is there to support any of that? And this is nothing suspicious about being patched into Conference Hunter's business pals 20 plus times to only talk about the weather. Well, let's just focus in on that. In the first place, it was 20 times over 10 years. It's not 20 times in a week. And these were brief calls where they did not discuss any business at all. Now, how do we know that? We know that that's what happened. For him to say that, do you really believe that's what happened? Yeah, because there's the uncontroverted evidence of that came from the person who worked at Burisma. The Republicans called him as their chief witness, and this guy was going to get on there and spill all the beans. And what did this man say? This is what lawyers do. They take a witness, they put him under oath, they ask him questions, and if there's nothing to contradict what he said under oath, unless he's a pathological liar like Trump and you can prove it, but if this fellow didn't fall in that category, and the Republicans called him, and he said he was present during all of these calls. They were nothing but some brief pleasantries. No business was discussed, and then they got off the line. And the main thing that they discussed at all was what Beau Biden was going through at that time, where he'd been diagnosed with brain cancer. So nothing, no evidence at all to support that there was anything untoward about these calls. And to say, do you really believe that? Yes, I really believe that, because the uncontroverted evidence is exactly that, Craig. Now, if you've got some evidence, I want you, when you respond to this, if you do, I want you to acknowledge that you have no evidence whatsoever. I don't even mean slim or no evidence whatsoever that there was any discussion of any business matters whatsoever in any of these phone calls, because that's the uncontroverted evidence, and I deal in evidence, and so should you. And please don't ever start off a discussion, a political discussion about anything, discussion, political or otherwise, is do you really believe that? Because the question of a lawyer, not some political junkie or some talking head with no background, of a lawyer, not just any lawyer either. As you know, very few of us are actually trial lawyers. They don't teach you how to try a case in law school. They don't test you for your ability to try a case before they let you into law school. We learn those things on our own. Chris Christie went to what? I think University of Delaware? Hardly a high-powered law school. Wait do you see what he does to DeSantis, who was a Harvard law graduate? Wait do you see what Chris Christie does to him during those debates? Because Chris Christie is a real lawyer. He's actually tried cases. I've tried a lot of cases. I've tried federal cases, I've tried state cases, I've tried jury cases, I've tried non-jury cases, and I've tried appellate cases up to and including in the United States Supreme Court. So I know how to try a case, and I know what lawyers are supposed to consider, and I'm pretty good at what I do. So I shouldn't have said that. That sounded bad. On the other hand, what kind of a lawyer would I be if I didn't think I was pretty good at what I do? Gee, I know you hired me and you pay me this hourly rate, but I got to be honest, I'm not that great. Really? Okay, well, I'm the heck with you then. Anyway, I've got an appointment with my brain surgeon who actually told me the same thing about him. But I feel pretty good about him because I think he's a nice guy, and I really do appreciate his modesty. He told me, I'll do the best I can, but I'm not that great of a brain surgeon. No, that's not what people are looking for when they hire a professional. So modesty is not on the top of the list of things that you want. Anyway, I've digressed, which is I have a habit of doing that. So Brian writes back and he slams Donald Trump. So Craig says, I'll play your game, says Craig. Let's begin here. Answer me this. Why did Burisma hire Hunter to sit on its board and pay him $83,000 a month while Joe was assigned to oversee Ukraine? ? Now, I've already discussed this with you, Craig, and you know it. And I told you, I said, you know damn good and well, as do I, why they paid him $83,000, what was it, a day, an hour, a week, a month? $83,000 a month. Now, first of all, it says, while Joe was assigned to oversee Ukraine. Joe was not assigned to oversee Ukraine. That's just not what happened. Let's stick with the facts. These are the facts. And I'll get to those in a second because I want to read the rest of what he said. How many prosecutors did Joe fire other than the one who was investigating Burisma? Other than the one that was investigating. Now, Craig, damn it, don't say things like that. People are going to read this thing and think you know what you're talking about. Joe, that attorney general, was fired at the instigation, at the demand of Barack Obama and virtually every person in NATO and every person with whom we were doing business. They all wanted that man fired, not because he was investigating Burisma. Now listen to me, Craig, because you said he fired the guy who was investigating Burisma. You said Joe Biden fired the person who was investigating Burisma. First place, Joe Biden didn't fire anybody. But the second thing is, the man they were talking about, they wanted to get rid of him because he was refusing to investigate Burisma. Let me try that on you again. The person they wanted to get rid of mainly because he was refusing to investigate Burisma. He was a holdover from that former president who was a puppet of of Russia. The people finally got rid of him. This guy was still in office, and he was doing everything he could to be as crooked as he could, and that's why Biden and everybody, and Biden and Barack Obama and the Prime Minister of England and the President of France and all over they wanted to get rid of this guy because the country was still reeking of corruption. There was a holdover from the Russian stranglehold on the presidency of Ukraine. Now that's gone. We have Zelensky in there, and Biden went to Zelensky, and he delivered the message. He was a messenger. And he said, you got money coming from us that we're helping you with whatever it is. But we're not going to give you that money unless you get rid of this man who is refusing to investigate Burisma. And this was at the time that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma. So why were they paying Hunter Biden $83,000 a month? You know damn good and well why they were doing that. Because they figured that if they got the vice president's kid, who incidentally, I have no way defending this kid, he's a jerk, but here's their thinking, because these people are crooks, and they're small-minded, and that's how small-minded crooks think. If we have the vice president's son on our board, that's going to insulate us from any attacks on that attorney general. They'll have to leave him alone because he's refusing to investigate us because he's one of our pals. And they won't get involved and try to get rid of him because we have Joe Biden's kid on our board of directors. That's what they thought. And there's no doubt in my mind that Hunter Biden was selling them that. And no doubt in my mind that, now again, how do I know, right? I don't have the facts. I don't have the actual facts to prove it. So I don't know it. I can't prove it, and I probably shouldn't say it. But it's kind of like Bill Maher says, I don't know how I know it. I just know that. That he was probably, the reason I believe that is because that would make sense. If he's on the board, he's being paid $83,000 a month. They know that Barack Obama and his father, not Barack Obama's father, please, George, that Hunter Biden's father were trying to get rid of this guy because they wanted Burisma to be investigated. So they talk to Hunter Biden, or somebody puts them in touch with Hunter. Oh yeah, hey, my dad's the vice president. We don't know if he actually made any representations, but damn good well that's why they hired him. And guess what? It didn't work, because contrary to what Craig says in his next sentence, Joe Biden, and I've been following Joe Biden since before these guys were born. Joe Biden is probably one of the most honest person ever to serve in Washington. He was forever the poorest of the United States senators. He never cashed in on his name. He took the train back and forth every day to spend time with his family, and then would come right back. Then commuted every day. It was a hell of a commute, and he was a straight arrow, and he still is. I've never heard Joe Biden say anything in his public life that wasn't true. And this is why I do agree with Brian. I can't say that about Donald Trump. I've never known Donald Trump to ever say anything that was true. So Joe Biden is not a dishonest man at all. And to accuse him of being a liar, which is what Craig does, again, where's your facts, Craig? Where's your evidence? Show me any evidence you have that Joe Biden ever lied about anything in his life, including this. Show me the admissible evidence. Pretend that you're actually a lawyer, not some Harvard guy, theory guy, but a guy who's actually been in the courtroom, and present this thing to the jury or the court with admissible evidence. You have zero admissible evidence that Joe Biden is a liar, and for you to say he's a liar when you have no evidence that he's a liar makes you a liar in that regard. So please, back off with that, and I'm asking you to please change your tune and look at this thing as if you and I were trying a case here, and you were trying to make a case that Joe Biden was a liar, and we wouldn't have any evidence. So what? You couldn't go in court and say that, and there'd be a motion in limine against us appropriately to prevent us from doing it. And you know that, and I know that. Now, next thing. Here he asks as a question to Brian, has it been shown, hello, Craig, remember burden of proof? He puts the burden of proof onto Brian. Has it been shown that Joe lied repeatedly over his life and repeatedly about his contacts with Hunter's business partners? Has it been shown that? He's asking that question. He should be answering that question, not asking it. That's the question to Craig. Has it been shown that? Do you have any evidence that? What's your basis for saying that? Why are you smearing this man's reputation? Just because what? Because you don't like his politics? And that's a whole other story. We need to talk about that. You need to get right with your politics. You're too decent a person, and in my opinion, too ignorant of the Republican Party, although you can see what's going on with it right now in spades, with all getting behind a person who's an obvious felon. But you need to get right with your understanding of economics and history. Because if you had that understanding, like I do, because I've been following this stuff since 1948, and plus my father was an economist. He taught me economics from the time I was a kid. He was a lawyer. He taught me law ever since I was a kid, including government contract law. He was a prosecutor. He was a U.S. attorney. He was a deputy attorney general for Indiana. He was in charge of special status and forces prosecutions after World War II, and he taught me all the time. So I learned this stuff about burden of proof and who carries what burden and who's required to present what and what's true and what isn't true. And my dad, whom I eminently respected, he also was a full colonel and later Congress appointed him as a C5, so he had to get approval from the Senate to run he was the judge advocate of the Air Force Communications Service. So my dad was a man of enormous integrity and experience and ability, and he used to say, Eddie, he said, a lot of my values might line up with the Republican Party, particularly when it comes to hard work and self-responsibility. So, but he said the problem is they lie all the time. He said if the Republicans ever told the truth, they'd never get elected to anything. And at the time, I thought, well, I was a kid, right? That's an exaggeration. Now that I'm not a kid anymore, I have to agree. Now, that's not every Republican, obviously. Like, I love Chris Christie out there. He's just ripping the skin off of Donald Trump. But look at the percentage of the prominent Republicans in the House, particularly in the House, but in the Senate and in state governments, who lie all the time. And I don't have time to go through it now, but when one of them doesn't, like Brian Kemp, and Georgia, it's like, wow, how can he turn his back on the Republican Party? Because to so many of these people, it's a team sport. Now, you want to talk about team sports? Okay, I love sports, particularly Michigan. So we can talk about that later after Michigan wins the International Football Championship this year, which I'm sure they're going to, because I just believe it. I just know it's true. In here, I know it's got to be true. This has got to be our year. If it's not this year, then when, right? We just got to get rid of those cheaters at Georgia and Ohio State. But I think it can be done. But didn't want to get off on that tactic because I think we're done with about everything I have to say today. But I did want to go through and respond to this thing, and I put on Facebook that I would be discussing these same issues on this channel. And hopefully they'll watch it. Maybe someday they'll get on it and we can have a robust debate among ourselves. What I try to do with this program is bring you things that you're not going to get from the newspapers. You're not going to get them from the talking heads, that's for sure. I'd like you to get a slightly different perspective, and I'd like to expand this so I can bring in just normal people who have often very, very good ideas. So with that, I'm going to say to you, adieu.